Hello there, Ray here, and today I will be showing you MobMania, which is the fastest overworld hostile mob farm in the game. This farm produces 178,000 items per hour. That is an average of over 50 double chests of items just in 1 hour. This video is a continuation of my previous two farm designs here, so make sure you have seen the previous two videos so that you understand all the mechanics that are used to get to this. In this newest farm design here, we overcome problems that we had in the previous designs where observers has been changed so that they no longer detect stuff and give out a output instantly. Instead, there is a delay in between, and this causes these retracting floors to be slow. So in this final design, we have accumulated all the pros from the previous designs, and then we also included the instant retracting, which we could not acquire after the changes to observer blocks. With these changes to observers, it wasn't as simple as to have an instant retracting floor, and therefore you would actually need more wiring and it wouldn't be as compact as this. Now you could do this amount of wiring, but it would take up more room, and therefore you may only have like 1/8 of all the spawning room around the player being used for actual mob spawning, and the rest would just be used for the device and all the redstone to make it instant retracting. Now a solution was found by JL2579 and Ragu42 and Enemy's Friend 22 and Ilmango and Methods, and the concept was instead of having one device activate one spawning floor was to have one device activate a large amount of spawning floor, and therefore you can actually have some room wasted by the device, and you can actually still have the rest of the room being saved just because you're having a lot of room for the spawning or for the mobs to spawn on. Now this is a great concept because you can actually save up room overall by doing this, but the downside is that for one mob that spawns inside of here, you may have to activate 100 some blocks, and therefore it is quite a bit more leggier than, let's say, a design that's just all observer blocks. Using that concept of theirs, I redesigned my spawning floor part here, and therefore I can actually have more mobs spawn per one device, and that does save room. We did both come up with a similar looking spawning floors, but I was able to overcome some of the problems that they had with push limits. I'm using Cubitech's tick speed mod, which allows me to slow down the game so you can see everything happening in slow mode. And what's happening here is that the floor is removed, it's pulled backwards, and then up above we have the row of slime block pushers which come down and push the mob downward. The way that this happens is that once the mob spawns here in the tripwire, it will come back and activate this tripwire hook back here, which will activate this piston, and this piston is a sticky piston and it's connected to a bunch of slime blocks. Now one of these slime blocks goes all the way down and hooks over here to this redstone block. This redstone block is right beside another sticky piston which is facing this direction and is holding this entire row here, which is 12 meters long. So there's 12 meters worth of spawning floor here, and this is all connected to this piston. So once the mob is in the spawning floors here, it will be able to get detected and the floor will be removed. Now what's also happening is that the slime blocks are connected to a redstone block up above as well, and this redstone block is coming over here and is changing the direction of this redstone here so that it changes from a dot to a straight line. So currently it's a straight line and it's not facing this piston over here, so even though it is powered, it's not powering this piston. So what happens when a mob activates a piston, it moves this redstone block forward, which turns it into a dot. Now we have over here is another piston which is right beside this redstone block. So once the redstone block is removed from this piston, the piston will retract. Now when that piston retracts, it will cause an update to this piston over here, and that will cause the piston to push forward. So we can see that happening again. Once that block is removed, both pistons change. This one retracts and this one extends, and this one gets updated by this piston over here, and then once he's updated, he sees that that is a dot, and that's why he powers downward. To get the piston to push down so that it would actually be pushing down all 12 meters worth of blocks here, I would have to have the piston being powered instantly. To do this, I had this concept of changing the way in which the wire faces. So the idea was that if I could somehow have it so that the wire would change, let's say the wire is facing that way, and then I can just remove power, and then now the wire's a dot, and then have the piston here get powered. But the piston doesn't actually detect when the wire is changing states, so that even if I had this alone, it wouldn't work. So what you have to do is have the redstone block removed and then also update the piston afterwards. And then Methods came up with this contraption where it would remove power or turn the power and then also update the piston, and it also has a fast retracting speed as well so that it resets. And then I came up with this concept over here, which is the one that is in that farm design over there, where you have the piston right beside the other piston, so that once the power is removed, it will turn it into a dot, and at the same time it turns it into a dot, it will also update this piston so that it pushes. By using this concept, I was able to actually have a instant pushing piston, which allowed me to use the entire 12 meter worth of slime blocks, which allows the farm to be more efficient because you can put in more spawning spaces per area where you have the farm. The nice thing about using this concept is that the redstone dust does not actually turn on or off, even though you can use it to turn the piston on and off. Therefore, you don't actually have any redstone updating with the on and off sequences. So just like the other designs, this one is also 3 meters wide, and it starts from the slime block over here and then it reaches over 3 meters. And this is kind of because of the piston here, which extends is 2 meters, and then the slime block is the 3rd meter. And then over here we have another slice that starts up, and they're tileable, so they're sitting right beside each other. Now to get it so that this spawning floor over here with the stickins, the slime blocks here, would actually pull on any other piston. So let's say this piston here was actually retracted, and this slime block floor here retracted as well. I could actually pull on this piston if it was retracted at the time. And to overcome this, I had to put a normal block down at this end so that it wouldn't try to pull on this piston. And then for that reason, I had to alternate the slices so that one of the devices that triggers on this side would go to this side over here, and then this spawning floor here, the whole device that triggers is on this side, so that they wouldn't actually have it so that the pistons would be pulling from each other. So the mob falls down, he can get kind of pushed off to the side if they spawn inside each other, and therefore we have walls on each side. Now you don't need them, as I showed earlier, but this will actually increase the rates by quite a bit, just because mobs can actually spawn inside each other and then they'll push each other off to the side, and therefore they won't actually land onto the killing chambers, and then they would just have to despawn naturally. Now you do also have problems where there is several different types of mobs that are different sizes that can spawn in the game. So you can have your normal zombies, which will actually get pushed by the sticky piston from above, so they will actually accelerate at probably at the fastest speed. Then you got stuff like a baby zombie, which doesn't get pushed by the slime block above, so therefore he actually falls at a different speed. Now if both of these would spawn in the same spot at the same time, they would actually have it so that they're more likely to push each other apart because they're falling at different speeds. Now that's why we actually have this trapdoors and cakes. And this allows it so the mobs can actually fall side to side, even if there's 2 mobs in here. Now the cakes cannot be moved by slime blocks. Therefore, instead of having a trapdoor, you have a cake here. It's not necessarily needed, just because the mobs are unlikely to push each other apart directly from the beginning. And mostly, as you can see, the adult zombie moves quite a bit quicker downwards than the baby. But this allows it so that both of them end up hitting onto this end rod. One thing I didn't mention in the previous video is that the distance in which the mobs fall is actually shorter than most mob farms, because most mob farms you drop like a normal zombie 24 meters to kill it. Now on this one you only drop it 23 meters, and this is just because the mob is getting pushed downwards, therefore it will actually die with less fall damage. Now so something like a baby zombie, which doesn't get pushed by the slime blocks, will actually survive the fall, and he'll hit the end rod so he takes some damage, but then he'll get pushed over and he'll have to be killed off by the magma blocks over here. And because of this, we can actually kill the mobs faster, just because the majority of the mobs will be 2 meters high. And once in a while you get baby zombie, which we will be able to kill just with the magma blocks. In the previous video I said that chicken jockeys survive, but I meant baby zombies because actually there is no chicken jockeys in the game that can actually spawn in. But what will happen when the game tries to spawn in a chicken jockey, it will actually just spawn in a chicken. So if you do see a chicken just spawn in your farm, it's just because it was a chicken jockey and there's a bug. And I'll put the bug report in the game or in the description, but what will happen is just a chicken will spawn instead of a chicken jockey, and therefore you just have a chicken spawn, and they don't really affect the game very much. But the killing floor is the same as my previous version, where the mobs will hit the end rod, get pushed into the lava, then their loot will fall into the water and get swept away, and then the baby zombies will fall onto magma blocks and die. You could just use 1 row of magma blocks here instead of the entire row, but for best results you want to kill the baby zombies as soon as they come down here. And then once the items get into the water stream, they get pushed underneath of these top slabs here, and they eventually get pushed over into your collection area. There is a problem with this design, and that is a known bug that tripwires can stay powered even though there is no entity inside of the tripwire. And this was addressed by JL, and he said it had to do something with chunk borders, but in my testing I could not find any relationship between chunk borders and the actual bug with the tripwires. So I'm not sure exactly what it's caused by, but I don't think it does anything to do with chunk borders or anything like that. But the way that I was able to find a workaround with it is just by having the player get pushed into the nether. Therefore he will unload all this area, including the entire farm, and then the player will just get pushed back out of the nether and he will resume AFKing here. And this only wastes about 5 seconds worth of AFK time to have the player go into Nether and then push him back out again. So the player would be sitting here AFK near this portal, and then ever so often we'd want the whole entire farm to be unloaded. To do this, we'd have the player moved into the Nether, and then it takes about 4 seconds for the player to go inside of the Nether portal, and then once he goes inside, he gets pushed out of one Nether portal and into another Nether portal, and then from here he can teleport back into the original Nether portal. The way I got this to work is that I have a timer back here which goes off ever so often, and you can put that for 30 minutes or an hour, and then you can have it so that the piston will push you. And here we have some transparent blocks so the player don't take damage, and we have some boats here with chickens in them, and the boats have collision boxes which will push the player or anything that's inside the portal out. This way I can actually get the player to get pushed out of the portal without using gas in a minecart or horse in a minecart. And then once the player gets pushed over into the Nether, he will be able to get pushed out of one portal and into the next. Let's see if I can actually show you what's going on in there. So what we have here is the same thing. We have a chicken in a boat, another chicken in a boat, and their boats are just pushing the player out. We actually have the boats sitting a little bit higher so that the player does not just teleport on top of the boats. If the boats are sitting down here, since the player was already on top of the boats on the other world, he would be placed on top of the boats on this world as well. So we had the boats up a little higher so that the player, even though he's up in the air a bit, he'll get pushed out. Then he gets pushed down, and he just falls down into this spot down here. Then we just have some pressure plates and another piston which will push him into this portal. This way he has a little bit of time to cool down so that he can go back into another portal. So from testing I got around 178,000 items per hour at 20 ticks per second, and I was just getting around 16 ticks per second with my setup, and I also tested their design as around 16 ticks per second. This is quite a bit lower than my previous design where it easily ran at 20 ticks per second with observer blocks, and with this one it's just with every spawn with a single mob spawning on the spawn floor, it's like 100 updates. So it's quite a bit more updates than the observer one, so it causes more lag. It's not as lag friendly as the previous one, but you can also build this in single player as well as multiplayer as long as you understand what you're getting into. If you're up for a challenge and you would like to build this, there is a world download in the description. There you have it guys, MobMania, the fastest mob farm of its type. So if you found this interesting, show me the like. If you'd like to see more contraptions like this, subscribe, and don't forget to comment. Bye!